Good morning, boys and girls. Today is Tuesday, and unfortunately, I won't be meeting with you today to have our live math class because we will be together for religion. So this is a video that's going to contain all of the information on the final math lesson of our chapter. We've been working really hard throughout chapter 3, learning all different ways to multiply large numbers, shortcuts using some mental math with the zeros, and even all of those properties. So we've kind of reached the finish line. We've gotten to the point where we're putting all of this together, and the very final lesson is the one that I'm going to be teaching you today. I hope that you're going to watch this video from the very start to the very finish, because inside of this video is going to be new information that you're going to need to be effective and successful for your test, which is scheduled for Thursday, December the 17th. As we learned from that quiz that we did in the past, things that we do in video lessons, like the one that I'm doing right now with you, you're still going to be expected to know this information, and it's going to show up on your test. So you've got to make sure that even though we're not meeting together for class, you are watching these videos from the beginning all the way through to the end, okay? So hopefully you have your notebook out. If you don't, you can pause the video and you can go grab your notebook, because we are going to take some notes today. And what you're going to do is you're going to title your notes Lesson 3-8, and the title of our lesson today is called Zeros in the Multiplier. So what a multiplier is it's the number that we use to come up with our product. So the numbers that we are multiplying together to come up with the answer, which is the product to, or the answer to our multiplication problem. The numbers that we're going to be playing with today that we're going to be multiplying together are going to be numbers that have zeros inside of the number. Some of them may show up at the end, but many of them are going to kind of be inside the numbers. So we learned at the start of this chapter, if they're at the end of the number, then we can use some of that mental math, and we can just multiply the numbers that aren't zeros first, and then just tag or attach our zeros on at the end. But if they don't, if they're inside of the number, like most of these problems are going to be, then we have to kind of go about solving them a little bit of a different way. So you're going to see that I'm going to give you two different ways to solve a problem. I'm going to do what's called a long way, and then there's also going to be a short way. So you're going to kind of determine which way you're most comfortable in solving. The long way is what it is. I mean, it says it's going to take a little bit longer for you to get to the answer. But the answer is what we're searching for. So if you're one of those people that just feels most comfortable doing it the long way, even though it might take you a little more time, then I'm cool with that. You just do what you're most comfortable with doing. But I'm also going to show you kind of a shortcut for those of you who might kind of be interested in, well, how do I do these kind of problems in a little bit of a quicker way? And that's a good thing to have. That's good knowledge to have, because one of the things that we know about math and even school in general is that a lot of the tests that we take are timed. Our map tests are timed. Our tests that we take in our classroom are timed. We always kind of have a certain amount of time that we have to complete things in. So when we're playing in some of this math that kind of takes a long time to get to the answer, just because there's so many steps that we have to take, if you are given a shortcut and you're taught a shortcut, this is a way to kind of save some time. And still get the correct answer. But again, I'm gonna say, if you're one of those people who math isn't super duper comfortable for, and you are comfortable in doing it in a certain way, and your way might be the long way, then stick with your method. Don't change for me. Do what's comfortable for you, because what I care about at the end is that you know how to solve these problems. And so the path that you took to go about getting your answer is completely up to you. Okay, so here's an example of a problem. I'm working the same problem the exact same way. So right now it looks a little bit messy and it looks maybe a little bit confusing. So I want you to just kind of pretend like the shortcut isn't there for a minute and just look at what I'm going to call the long way. Okay, so our problem was 225 times 208. So I made the zero a red color, and I did that because I wanted you to I wanted that zero to stand out to you, because this number right here, 208, this is a multiplier, and the zero is inside of this multiplier. So that's why this lesson is called Zero Inside the Multiplier, because this zero is on the inside. So what we know we have to do to solve this is we have to start with the digit in the ones place first. So as you can see, that's what I have done. I started with my 8 and I did 8 times 5, which my brain told me was 40. So I dropped my 0 and I carried my 4. Now you can't see my 4 because I've already worked through this problem, but I want you to just kind of imagine that a 4 is like hanging right up here on top of that 2. The next thing I did was do 8 times 2, which my brain told me was 16, but then I added those extra 4, which made my total of a 20. So I dropped my 0, and then again, I kind of carried my 2, which unfortunately you can't see here in this video. But imagine that there's a 2 up there. The final step was doing 8 times 2, which was 16, but then I had those extra 2 guys up here, so I had to add those back in, and that gave me my 18. So that's where my 1800 came from. So this is my partial product. This is one of my partial products. This is one of the answers that I have come up with to kind of get me to what the final product is going to be. But here's where you notice some things get a little bit different from what we did yesterday when we learned how to multiply 3-digit numbers. When there's a 0 in that tens place, the long way would tell me, okay, well, I'm going to put my 0 placeholder here, and now I'm going to move over here to my 0, and I'm going to multiply my 0 by everything at the top. So 5 times 0 is 0, so that's where my 0 went here. 0 times 2 is 0, so my 0 went here. And then 0 times 2 is 0 again, so 0 went here. But look what these arrows are telling you. They're telling you that, look, everything with this digit, since we know the multiplication property with 0 tells us that anytime we multiply a number by 0, our product is always going to be a 0. So this whole row of numbers is all zeros, which that is a little bit of a waste of our time because it doesn't give us any value. They're just like a bunch of zeros holding a place, okay? But again, this is the long way. So for those of you that are comfortable, you are more than welcome to do it in this fashion, okay? So if we're going to continue on, now we're moving to the 2, which is now in the hundreds place. So as we learned yesterday, we have to put 2 0 placeholders here because we want our answers to start in that hundreds position. So now I'm going to multiply my 2 by every digit at the top. So 2 times 5 is 10. So I bring my 0 down and I carry my 1. So imagine a little 1 being right up here. 2 times 2 is 4, plus my 1 extra guy, he's 5. So that's where my 5 came from down here. And then my 2 times my 2 was 4. So all of these are my partial products. So as you can tell, one of my partial products is all zeros. But if I add it all together, my 1s add up to 0, my 10s add up to 0, my hundreds add up to 8, my thousands add up to 6, and then my 10,000s add up to 4. So my final answer becomes 46,800. And that's what we call the long way of solving this problem, which is exactly how you were taught to do it yesterday with 3-digit multiplication. And that's how you have to do all numbers that have 3 digits, except if there's a 0. If there's a 0, you can sometimes take a shortcut. And that's what I wanted to show you today. So let's look at that same problem now on this side over here using the shortcut. Okay, so as you notice, my problem didn't change. It was 225 times 208, and I kept my 0 red so that you could still see that 0 inside the multiplier. When I multiplied my 8 by everything at the top, you'll notice I got the same thing, 1,800. I got that same partial product right here at the top because I didn't do anything different yet. So the next place is where the different step is going to happen, or the shortcut's going to happen. So I'm moving to the tens place. So as you can see here, what I did is I went ahead and put my 0 placeholder. I know I have to do that. But because the 0, if I'm going to multiply my 0 by everything at the top, and it's going to give me nothing but zeros as an answer, I want to eliminate this whole row of partial products. So instead, I'm just going to go ahead and fill in a 0 here underneath my 0 that I'm playing with, because everything I do with that 0 is going to still add up or multiply out to be 0. So there's no point in me really having all of these zeros in a big long line when I know that 0 is, if I add 0 to anything else, it's not going to give me any more value. Okay, so What I did here to save myself some work is I added my 0 here, since all of these are going to end up to be 0, and then I put another 0 here. Those two zeros kind of eliminated this step, and it started my work into the next step that I'm in. Okay, so as you can see, now all I have to do instead of doing that is now I just start multiplying with my 2. I'm directly underneath my 2 where I need to be. So I filled in my 0 there because all of those zeros are going to multiply out to be 0. So I just need that 1 0 there. Now we're going to move over and we're going to start multiplying with our 2. So 2 times 5 is 10. So I drop my 0 and I carry my 1. So imagine my little 1 just kind of being up here. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 more is 5. I bring my 5 down here, and then 2 times 2 is 4, and I bring my 4 here. So you can see the partial product 45,000 that I have over here is the same partial product that I have over here. The step that I eliminated was that middle row of zeros for partial product because I didn't need them. So again, all I did to avoid that step is, since 0 and when I multiply 0 by everything up here is always going to be zeros, I just filled in 1 0 there and told myself all of that's going to end up to 0. And now let's go ahead and just start moving over with my hundreds place. Okay. And if I add all this stuff together, you can see it adds up to 46,800, just like it did over here, because those zeros in that partial product are not going to change any kind of value when I add. So this is an example of a long way and a short way, but I want to take a minute and kind of like do one with you. I know a lot of times when we do these videos, I already have things kind of here and I just kind of walk you through it, but I want to do a live one with you just so that you can kind of see how this looks while I'm actually practicing it out, okay? So I'm going to step away from the screen for a minute so I can show you a particular problem that would work this way. Okay, so let's say that you have a problem. For example, this one's going to unwind. Let's say that you have a problem like, here's a good example. So in this example, we have 435 times 601. Okay. Hold on, boys and girls. We're doing a little Christmas thing at school today, and Miss Sims is giving an announcement. Okay, so back to where we were at. Okay, so you see right here we have our 0 inside of our multiplier. So I'm going to choose to use the shortcut because I want to try to save myself time when I work these kind of math problems. So the first thing I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to multiply my 1 by everything at the top first. And that's what we normally do. This part hasn't changed. So 1 times 5 is 5, 1 times 3 is 3, and 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, now the next step doesn't change either. I have to put my 0 placeholder in there, as you guys know, but this is where the shortcut gets to happen. Because the next digit is a 0, I know that everything that I multiply that 0 by is going to just give me zeros. So I'm going to eliminate that whole line of zeros and just go ahead and put a 0 in that position, because they're all going to end up to be zeros. And now I'm just going to move on over to my hundreds place, and my answers for my hundreds place are going to start forming right here under my 6. So my 6 times my 5 gives me 30. So I'm going to drop my 0 and I'm going to carry my 3. My 6 times my 3 is 18, plus my extra 3 up top gives me, you should be telling yourself, 21. So I'm going to drop my 2 or my 1 and carry my 2. And then I have my 6 times my 4, which is 24, plus my extra 2 is 26. Okay, so you notice I have these little digits out here that don't have any guys up above them that I'm adding with, but that's okay. That's because we eliminated that whole line of zeros. So they're kind of in their own little space right now, but I'm definitely making sure that I keep things all in line. So now I have my partial products. I can go ahead and add. So I'm going to put my plus sign, I'm going to draw my big line under, and now I'm going to add these things up. 5, 3, 4, And these don't even have anything to add. I just have to bring them down. So my final answer for this particular problem is 261,435. So hopefully, I know the screen before, I used a lot of words to kind of explain, but now you saw me physically work a problem. And so hopefully that kind of helps you to understand that shortcut a little bit better. Now, there's one other example that I want to show you, because today your assignment that you're going to get is going to have you practicing some of these. But for this particular one, I want to show you how instead of the 0 being inside of the multiplier, sometimes it's still on the end. So when you see a problem like that, you should say to yourself, wait a minute, I know kind of how to do that. Miss Malone kind of already taught us how to do that. So an example of that would be something like, let's do 302 times 200, okay? So boys and girls, this is one of those problems that because there are zeros at the back, I don't even have to really do any multiplication with those numbers at all, because anytime I multiply my 0 by anything up here, my answer is always just going to turn out to be 0. So I can solve this in two ways. One of the way that I can solve it is just kind of like in the problem before, I can go ahead and put my 0 underneath this 0 right here, because I know that everything that I multiply that 0 by is going to come up with a 0 as an answer, okay? And then I can go ahead for this 0, I can also put another 0, because I know that when I multiply that 0 by everything, I'm still going to get an answer of a 0. So now all I have to do is start multiplying my 2 by each of the digits at the top. So 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 0 is 0, and then 2 times 3 is 6. So for this one, I only have one line of numbers for my answer, because these zeros here, we're not going to change any part of that answer. Okay, so that's one way that you could have done it. Or if you think to kind of back how we were taught this at the start of the chapter, we learned that anytime a number has zeros at the end, you just multiply the numbers that aren't zeros first. So if it's easier for you to look at the problem that way, you can say, okay, well, 302 times 2, and you can just multiply it like that first. And then we learned however many zeros were at the end in the answer is how many zeros would go at the end of your answer here. So there's 2 zeros in the problem here. So those 2 zeros then would go into the answer there. So as you can see, we got the same answer for each, but it's just kind of a different way to go about solving it. So as you work through your assignment today, boys and girls, this is called zeros in the multiplier, and this is what you're practicing. You're practicing on how to multiply numbers that might have zeros inside when you're playing with big 3-digit numbers, all right? So there's some practice problems here that I've given you. There are 3 of them. These are now for you to pause the video and work through them. I do not need you to turn these into me. This is a learning time for you. This is where you kind of practice the stuff. As you notice in the first particular problem, there's a 0 inside the multiplier. And for the number 3 problem, there's 2 zeros inside those multipliers. But then for the number 2 problem, I did one that had those zeros at the back. So you can kind of go back if you need to in the video to kind of review how I solved this. And help you to kind of come up with these answers, okay? So at this point, you can stop your video and then come back and see how you did, okay? Now, once you've returned, you can use that calculator to kind of check to see how you did for these particular problems, to see if you got those answers correct. I will go ahead and share with you the answers for these particular problems in case you might be wondering and you don't have a calculator handy, and you might be wondering how well you did and if you got it correct. So for problem number 1, once you multiply 225 times 208, your answer would be 46,800. So hopefully you're cheering and you're excited because you got that one correct, okay? Let's try another one. So let's look at problem number 2. So for problem number 2, we were experimenting with what 936 times 400 was going to be. So hopefully for that one, you took that shortcut and you either added those 2 zeros at the start and then just multiplied the 4 by everything, or maybe you did 936 times 4 and then added those zeros to the answer at the end. But your final answer for this one was 374,400. And then for the final one, for problem number 3, for this one, if you're curious what your answer, and if you got the answer right for that one, for 604 times 206, your answer should have been 124,424. Okay, so there's your answers to your practice problems. So now what you are set to do, hopefully this feels comfortable to you. You understand how to do this skill. And so now you're ready to kind of show what you can do. So your assignment for today is to complete workbook page 48. I'm only making you do one page, not pages 47 and 48. It's a lot of stuff. It takes a lot of work for some of these problems. So I'm only making you do one of those workbook pages. So you only have to complete page 48. Don't forget, you have a test on Thursday, December the 17th. I'll be putting, there should be a study guide in your Google Classroom, hopefully by today, for you to use as review and practice for your upcoming test. And then there is no, just a reminder, there are no IXL minutes due this week. You have an off Christmas week. You don't have to worry about doing any IXL. Okay, hopefully you don't have any questions, but as always, when you finish watching the video, if you need me for any reason, you know my email, or you can send me a message and I can kind of help you that way. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.